Lonely Human accepted a deaf girl as housekeeper to repay her drunk father. Then he realized. Captain Jack Mitchell squinted against the harsh sunlight as he stepped off his starship onto the dusty surface of Proxima 6. The desert planet's dual suns beat down mercilessly, turning the landing pad into a scorching griddle. He adjusted his worn cowboy hat and tugged at his leather jacket, which bore the faded emblem of the Galactic Merchant Fleet on the shoulder. "Damn heat," he muttered, scanning the barren landscape. The settlement was little more than a collection of domed structures clustered around the spaceport, a forgotten outpost at the edge of civilized space. Mitchell had delivered rare medical supplies to this backwater world, and now it was time to collect. His contact, a blue-skinned Proximan trader named Gron, was already stumbling toward him, clearly deep in his cups despite the early hour. "Captain Mitchell!" Gron bellowed, his bulky frame swaying slightly. The alien's protruding belly strained against a torn vest, and simple cloth trousers completed his disheveled appearance. "Successful delivery, yes?" "Very good, very good." Mitchell crossed his arms. "It's time to settle up, Gron." 15,000 credits, as agreed. Gron's small eyes darted nervously. About that. Market fluctuations, you understand. Very bad timing. Credits temporarily unavailable." "Unavailable?" Mitchell's voice dropped dangerously. "I hauled those supplies across 3 systems through a pirate-infested corridor. Our agreement was clear. Have alternative payment. Very valuable." Gron turned and beckoned toward one of the nearby structures. "Kiara, come." A slender figure emerged hesitantly from the shadows. Mitchell's breath caught as she approached. She was clearly Proximan, with the characteristic blue skin, but there the resemblance to Gron ended. She was graceful, with large expressive eyes and flowing silver hair that caught the sunlight. Her simple pale dress clung to her form, and she clutched a small bag of possessions in one hand. "My daughter," Gron announced proudly. "Excellent housekeeper. Cook, clean, very obedient." Mitchell's jaw tightened. "You're offering your daughter as payment?" "That's not happening, Gron." The alien trader waved dismissively. "Not permanent? 1 standard year's service, then debt clear." He leaned closer, his breath reeking of fermented fruit. "She deaf. Born that way. Useless here. Better with human. Humans treat servants well, yes?" Mitchell looked at the girl, Kiara. She stood with downcast eyes, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight trembling of her hands. When she briefly glanced up, he caught a flash of intelligence and fear in those large eyes. "This isn't right," Mitchell said firmly. "I want my credits." Gron's demeanor changed instantly. "No credits. Take girl or nothing." He grabbed Kiara's arm roughly, causing her to flinch. "She good worker, strong, smart, even without hearing. 1 year only." Mitchell felt his anger rising at the alien's treatment of his daughter. He'd seen enough of Proxima 6 to know what happened to those who couldn't pay their debts here. The local loan sharks weren't known for their mercy, and if Gron couldn't pay Mitchell, he likely couldn't pay others. "Does she have any say in this?" Mitchell asked, though he knew the answer. Gron snorted. "She obey father is our way." Mitchell looked at Kiara again. This time she met his gaze directly. There was something in her eyes, not just fear, but a silent plea. "I'll take her to my place on Alpha," Mitchell said finally. 1 year, then she returns and our debt is settled." Gron's face split into a wide grin. "Excellent. Very fair." He shoved Kiara forward. "Go with human now. Serve well." Mitchell watched as Kiara stumbled slightly, then straightened her back and walked toward him with as much dignity as she could muster. He felt a surge of protectiveness, followed by uncertainty. What the hell was he supposed to do with a deaf alien housemaid? "My ship leaves in 20 minutes, he said gruffly. "Say your goodbyes." But Gron was already walking away, not even looking back at his daughter. Kiara watched him go, her expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," Mitchell said, knowing she couldn't hear him. He awkwardly touched her shoulder to get her attention, then gestured toward his ship. She nodded once and followed him up the ramp, her steps hesitant but determined. As the ship's door closed behind them, Mitchell couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just become infinitely more complicated. The journey to Alpha took 3 standard days. 3 days of awkward gestures, frustrated attempts at communication, and uncomfortable silences. Mitchell had given Kiara a small cabin adjacent to his own, respecting her privacy while keeping her close enough to assist if needed. On the second day, Mitchell found Kiara in the galley, staring in confusion at the food synthesizer. When she noticed him, she stepped back quickly, eyes downcast. "It's okay," he said automatically before remembering she couldn't hear him. He moved beside her and demonstrated how to operate the machine, pressing buttons to produce a simple meal. Her eyes tracked his movements with keen intelligence. When he handed her the plate, their fingers brushed. Mitchell felt an unexpected jolt at the contact. Her skin was cooler than a human's, smooth as polished stone. Kiara's eyes widened slightly, suggesting she'd felt something too. That evening, Mitchell was reviewing cargo manifests in the ship's common area when Kiara appeared with a data pad she'd found. She sat across from him and began writing, then slid the pad toward him. "I can read lips if you speak slowly. I can write in standard." Mitchell looked up in surprise. "Your father didn't mention you could communicate this way." She took back the pad. "Father thinks communication requires sound. He never tried to understand." "I'm sorry about that," Mitchell said, making sure to face her directly. "And I'm sorry about this whole situation. You saved me. Father owed dangerous people. Would have sold me to worse men." Mitchell's jaw tightened. "No one should be sold to anyone." A small smile touched her lips. "Humans have strange ideas. Freedom, choice. Not common in outer systems." "Well, get used to strange human ideas," Mitchell said. "On Alpha, you'll be treated with respect." "What will duties be?" she wrote. Mitchell considered this. He hadn't actually thought that far ahead. His home on Alpha was a modest place on the outskirts of New Olympia, the main human settlement. He'd purchased it years ago as a quiet retreat between cargo runs. Light housekeeping, I suppose. Cooking if you know how. Nothing inappropriate, he added firmly. Kiara studied his face, then wrote, "I understand. You are honorable man." Mitchell felt his face warm slightly. "I try to be." Over the next day, their communication improved dramatically. Mitchell learned that Kiara had been teaching herself to read standard language from discarded data pads, hungry for knowledge her father never provided. She was quick-witted and observant, catching nuances in his expressions that even people who could hear often missed. When they finally reached Alpha, Mitchell guided his ship into the landing bay at New Olympia Spaceport. Through the view screen, the lush landscape of his adopted home planet spread out before them, rolling hills covered in purple-tinged vegetation, the gleaming white buildings of the settlement nestled in a valley. "Welcome to Alpha," Mitchell said as Kiara gazed in wonder at the view. He drove them to his home in a ground transport, watching as Kiara pressed her face to the window, taking in everything with wide-eyed fascination. His house came into view, a single-story structure with a wide porch built in the style of old Earth ranch homes, an architectural oddity among the more modern dwellings of the colony. Inside, Kiara moved slowly from room to room, trailing her fingers over unfamiliar objects. She paused at a shelf displaying various items Mitchell had collected during his travels. A crystalline? No, a glass figurine from Centauri Prime, a woven tapestry from the Pleiades cluster. "Make yourself at home," Mitchell said when she turned to face him. "I'll show you to your room." He led her down a hallway to a spare bedroom he rarely used. It was simply furnished but comfortable, with a large window overlooking his garden. Kiara wrote on her datapad, "Beautiful. Never had owned room before." Something in Mitchell's chest tightened. "Well, you do now." That evening, after showing Kiara the basics of his home systems, Mitchell sat on his porch watching Alpha's sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and violet. He heard the door slide open behind him and turned to see Kiara standing there hesitant. She'd changed into clothes she'd found in the synthesizer, simple trousers and a tunic that complemented her blue skin. Her silver hair was loose around her shoulders, catching the last rays of sunlight. Mitchell gestured to the empty chair beside him. She sat, her movements graceful and measured. For a while, they simply watched the sunset together. No words, no gestures, a just shared silence. Mitchell realized with a start that it was the most peaceful moment he'd experienced in years. Kiara wrote something on her datapad and showed it to him. "Why does human man live alone in big house?" Mitchell considered his answer carefully. "I've spent most of my life on ships, moving from place to place. Never stayed anywhere long enough to connect." Lonely, she wrote. He looked at her, struck by her directness. Sometimes. Yes. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Then she wrote, Me too. Always. As darkness fell over Alpha, Mitchell realized that for the first time in longer than he could remember, he didn't feel quite so alone. A week passed quickly as Kiara settled into life on Alpha. Mitchell found himself enjoying her company more than he'd expected. She moved through his home with quiet efficiency, transforming the bachelor's quarters into something that actually felt like a home. Fresh flowers appeared on tables, rooms were arranged more thoughtfully, and somehow the food synthesizer produced meals that tasted better under her programming. One morning, Mitchell was attempting to repair a malfunctioning water recycler in the garden when the tool slipped, slicing deeply into his palm. "Son of a..." he hissed, blood welling immediately from the wound. A shadow fell across him, and he looked up to see Kira standing there, her eyes widening at the sight of his blood, crimson against his tan skin, so different from the indigo that flowed through her veins. Before he could react, she knelt beside him and gently took his injured hand in both of hers. Her touch was cool and soothing. From a pocket in her tunic, she produced a small pouch and extracted a pinch of fine powder, which she sprinkled directly into the wound. Mitchell winced, expecting pain, but instead felt a pleasant numbness spreading from the cut. Kiara's fingers moved with practiced precision as she pressed the edges of the wound together. To his astonishment, the bleeding slowed almost immediately. "How did you..." he began, but fell silent as she concentrated on her work. From another pocket, she pulled a thin strip of translucent material that she wrapped around his palm. Within moments, the material seemed to meld with his skin, creating a flexible, barely visible seal over the wound. When she finished, she looked up at him, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She reached for her datapad. "And my people are natural healers. Father sold my remedies at market." Mitchell flexed his hand, feeling only the slightest twinge where moments before had been searing pain. "That's remarkable, thank you. You are welcome." She paused, then added, "Your blood is beautiful color." Mitchell laughed, surprised by the observation. "I've never thought of blood as beautiful before." She reached out hesitantly, her slender blue fingers hovering over his stubbled cheek. "May I?" He nodded, his mouth suddenly dry. Her cool fingertips traced the line of his jaw with feather-light pressure. Her eyes studied his features with undisguised fascination. Mitchell found himself holding his breath as her thumb brushed the corner of his mouth. The moment was shattered by a harsh electronic chime, the perimeter alert. Kiara snatched her hand back as if burned. Mitchell cleared his throat. "Visitors, huh?" he explained, standing quickly. "Rare out here." Through the security monitor, he saw his neighbors, the Vrelix family, four-armed insectoid aliens who operated the nearest farm. The father, Trell, was accompanied by his son, Krell. Mitchell sighed. The Vrelix were decent neighbors, but notoriously judgmental of other species' customs. This would be Kiara's first interaction with Alpha's local aliens. "They're harmless, but traditional," he told Kiara as he opened the door. Trell's mandibles clicked in greeting. "Mitchell, we bring harvest offerings." He thrust forward a container of what appeared to be glowing fungi. "Thanks, Trell. Come in." Mitchell stepped aside. "This is Kiara. She's staying with me." Four sets of compound eyes swiveled to examine Kiara, who stood perfectly still under their scrutiny. "Proxyman female," Trell observed, his antennae twitching. "You have taken a breeder?" Mitchell felt his face flush. "She's my housekeeper." Krell chittered something in their native language, and both Vrelix made a sound Mitchell recognized as their version of laughter. "What's funny?" Mitchell asked, his voice hardening slightly. "Human customs," Trell explained. "So inefficient. Female serves dual purpose, home maintenance, and reproduction. Why separate functions?" Mitchell opened his mouth to object, but Kiara stepped forward, her movements graceful and deliberate. To everyone's surprise, she began making a series of fluid gestures with her hands, not random movements, but clearly a structured language. The Vrelix watched, fascinated. When she finished, she looked expectantly at Mitchell. "I don't understand," he admitted. She reached for her datapad and wrote, "Proximon Sign Language. I explained I cannot hear but can read lips. Ask them to face me when speaking." Mitchell translated for the Vrelix, who seemed impressed despite themselves. Clever adaptation, Trowell conceded. Perhaps not merely decorative after all. After an awkward tea service where the Vrelics questioned Mitchell extensively about his arrangement with Kiara, the neighbors finally departed. Mitchell closed the door with relief. "I'm sorry about that," he said, turning to Kiara. "Their views on gender roles are antiquated." Kiara shrugged and wrote, "Many species same, humans different. Respect individuals." "Not all humans are so enlightened," Mitchell admitted, "but we try." "Teach me," she wrote suddenly. "Teach you what?" "Human sign language. You learn mine, I learn yours." Mitchell smiled. "I'd like that." That evening, they sat cross-legged on the living room floor, hands moving in the air between them as they exchanged signs. Mitchell was clumsy at first, his larger fingers struggling to form the delicate gestures of proximan signing. Kiara was patient, gently correcting his form, her cool fingers adjusting his. Later, as Mitchell headed to his study to check messages before bed, he found Kiara already there, hastily replacing something on his desk. "What are you doing?" he asked sharply, forgetting to face her directly. She turned, startled, and he repeated the question so she could see his lips. Her hands moved in proximan signs he couldn't follow. Then she grabbed her datapad. "Cleaning. Found message. Not meaning to pry." Mitchell looked at his desk and felt his blood run cold. The secure datapad containing encrypted communications from his former commander was active, its screen glowing with the coalition military insignia. "You shouldn't touch that," he said, his voice tight. "Ever." Hurt flashed across her face, followed by confusion. She wrote quickly, "You were soldier, not just captain?" Mitchell took a deep breath. The past he'd carefully buried was threatening to surface, and he wasn't ready to face it, or share it. "Go to bed, Kiara," he said, not unkindly but firmly. "We'll talk tomorrow." As she left, her shoulders slumped in dejection, Mitchell stared at the message that had lain dormant for months. "Captain Mitchell, Operation Stardust compromised. Sleeper agents activated. Watch your back. Commander Harris." Mitchell barely slept that night. The warning from Commander Harris kept replaying in his mind. Operation Stardust compromised. Sleeper agents activated. Watch your back. He'd thought he had left that life behind. The covert operations, the constant vigilance, the danger. For 3 years, he'd carefully maintained his cover as a simple cargo hauler, letting the galaxy believe Captain Jack Mitchell was nothing more than a freelance trader with a taste for solitude. But now the past was catching up, and worse, it might catch Kiara in its crossfire. At dawn, he sent an encrypted response to Harris. "Status update required. Civilian complication, advise." When Mitchell entered the kitchen, Kiara was already there, preparing a breakfast of fresh fruit and synthesized protein. She glanced up as he entered, her expression guarded. "Good morning," he said, making sure she could see his face. She nodded but didn't smile. Her hands moved in the proximan signs they'd practiced the night before. "You angry?" Mitchell sighed and shook his head. "Not angry. Worried." She reached for her datapad. "About message? Military message?" "It's complicated," Mitchell said, choosing his words carefully. "That datapad contains information from my previous job, before I became a cargo hauler." "You lie about who you are?" Her large eyes studied him intently. "Not exactly. I was a cargo captain, but before that, I worked for the Human Coalition Defense Force, Special Operations." Her expression remained neutral, but her fingers tightened around the datapad. "Dangerous work?" "Very. That's why I left." Mitchell ran a hand through his hair. "Look, it's better if you don't know the details." "For your safety." Kiara's eyes flashed with something, hurt perhaps, or frustration. She typed rapidly. "Not child, not fragile. Father treated me like burden. You same?" The accusation stung. "That's not fair." "I'm trying to protect you." "From what?" she challenged. Mitchell hesitated. How much could he safely tell her? "There are people, aliens, who might come looking for me. Dangerous people who wouldn't hesitate to hurt anyone associated with me." Kiara considered this, then wrote, "Because you human, or because what you did?" "Both," Mitchell admitted. I uncovered something I wasn't supposed to find. A plot against human colonies. She nodded slowly, processing this information. Then she surprised him by setting down the datapad and moving closer. Her cool fingers touched his hand, and she looked up at him with determination in her eyes. She pointed to herself, then made a protective gesture around an imaginary perimeter, finishing by pointing at him. The meaning was clear. I can protect myself and you. Mitchell felt something tighten in his chest. It's not that simple. She retrieved her datapad. Then make simple. Trust me or send me away. The directness of the ultimatum caught him off guard. I don't want to send you away. Then trust. She held his gaze steadily. Mitchell broke eye contact first. I need time. This isn't just about me. For the next few days, Mitchell maintained a careful distance from Kiara. He spent long hours in his study, communicating with old contacts, trying to piece together what might have compromised Operation Stardust. When they did interact, he kept conversations brief and impersonal. He told himself it was for her protection, but the hurt in her eyes each time he pulled away made his chest ache. On the fourth day, Mitchell found a small package outside his bedroom door. Inside was a vial of iridescent liquid and a note, for nightmares, 2 drops before sleep. He hadn't realized she'd heard his restless nights, then remembered with a pang that she couldn't hear. She must have felt the vibrations of his pacing through the floor, or perhaps noticed the shadows under his eyes. That evening, against his better judgment, he used the remedy. He slept deeply for the first time in weeks, waking refreshed to find Kiara tending the garden outside his window. Sunlight caught in her silver hair as she worked, her movements graceful and precise. The sight hit him with unexpected force. In just a few weeks, she'd become essential to his life in ways he hadn't anticipated. The thought of her being harmed because of him was unbearable. When his secure datapad chimed with Harris's response, Mitchell steeled himself before reading it. Syndicate has infiltrated Proximan trading networks. Suspect your location compromised. Extraction team en route. ETA 48 hours. No witnesses. Mitchell's blood ran cold. Harris didn't know about Kiara, and no witnesses was standard protocol for extraction operations. If the team arrived and found her, he looked out the window again. Kiara had finished in the garden and was walking toward the house, a basket of local herbs in her arms. Sunlight played across her blue skin, and despite everything, she smiled when she caught sight of him watching her. In that moment, Mitchell made his decision. He wouldn't let Harris's team anywhere near her, which meant they had less than 2 days to disappear. As Kiara entered the house, Mitchell met her in the hallway. Her smile faltered when she saw his expression. We need to talk, he said, making sure she could read his lips. It's about that message. And why we need to leave tonight. Pack only what you need, Mitchell instructed as they rushed through the house. Food, water, medical supplies. My backup shuttle is hidden in the storage barn. Kiara nodded, her movements swift and precise as she gathered essentials. Mitchell was impressed by her calm efficiency. No panic, no wasted motion. She'd clearly lived a life where quick escapes might be necessary. Within 30 minutes, they had loaded the small shuttle, a weathered but reliable craft Mitchell had kept off official registries. As the sun set over Alpha's purple hills, they slipped away. The shuttle's stealth systems engaged to avoid detection. We'll head for the outer rim, Mitchell explained once they were safely in orbit. I have contacts there who can help us disappear. Kiara watched his lips intently, then wrote, Who hunts us? Mitchell hesitated before answering. They're called the Syndicate, a coalition of alien species who believe humans are expanding too quickly through the galaxy. 3 years ago, I discovered they were planning coordinated attacks on human colonies. My team stopped them, but apparently not all of them. Why now, after years? I don't know, Mitchell admitted. Maybe they found something that led them to me. Or someone talked. They fell into silence as the shuttle pushed deeper into space. Mitchell plotted a complex course, jumping through several minor systems to confuse any pursuit. Kiara sat beside him in the co-pilot seat, her silver hair gleaming in the glow of the instrument panel. Several hours into their journey, an alarm flashed on the console. Mitchell swore under his breath. We've got a problem, he said, turning so Kiara could see his face. There's a tracking device on the hull. They must have planted it while I was away on a cargo run. Kiara's eyes widened. She pointed to the navigation screen, then made a diving motion with her hand. "You're right," Mitchell agreed. "We need to land somewhere and remove it before they catch up." The nearest celestial body was Taurus Minor, a harsh moon orbiting a gas giant. Its surface was rocky and inhospitable, with thin atmosphere and extreme temperature fluctuations. But it would have to do. Mitchell guided the shuttle down through swirling clouds of reddish dust. They landed in a narrow canyon that would provide some cover from orbital scans. "I'll have to go outside to remove the tracker," Mitchell said, already pulling on an environmental suit. "Stay here and keep the engines warm. If anything happens to me, there's an emergency protocol in the computer. It'll take you to a safe outpost." Kiara shook her head firmly and pointed to herself, then to the airlock. "It's too dangerous," Mitchell argued. "The atmosphere is barely breathable, and the temperature drops to freezing after sunset, which is in about an hour." She grabbed her datapad. "Two faster than one. Need to hurry." Mitchell couldn't argue with her logic. They suited up together and exited the shuttle into the alien landscape. The tracker was embedded in the hull near the rear thrusters, a sophisticated device that would require careful removal to avoid triggering any failsafes. As they worked together in the fading light, Mitchell found himself acutely aware of Kiara's presence beside him. Even in the bulky environmental suit, her movements were graceful. When their gloved hands brushed as they passed tools back and forth, he felt an electric awareness that had nothing to do with the static charge in Taurus Minor's atmosphere. Just as they extracted the device, Mitchell spotted movement on the ridge above them. "Down!" he shouted, forgetting momentarily that Kiara couldn't hear him. He grabbed her arm and pulled her behind the shuttle as energy bolts struck the ground where they'd been standing. Syndicate hunters. They must have been closer than he thought. Mitchell drew his blaster and returned fire, forcing their attackers to take cover. He counted at least 3 figures on the ridge, humanoid but definitely not human, with elongated limbs and reflective body armor that caught the last rays of the setting sun. Kiara tugged at his arm and pointed urgently toward a narrow crevice in the canyon wall. An escape route. Mitchell nodded, and they made a break for it, dodging energy bolts as they ran. The crevice led to a small cave, barely large enough for both of them. As darkness fell, the temperature plummeted just as Mitchell had warned. Their environmental suits provided some protection, but the heating systems weren't designed for prolonged exposure. "We'll have to wait them out," Mitchell whispered, forgetting again that Kiara couldn't hear him. He switched on the small light in his helmet so she could see his face. "They won't risk the night cold for long." Kiara nodded, her breath fogging her helmet visor. She was shivering already. Mitchell pulled her closer, sharing what body heat he could through the suits. As they huddled together in the darkness, Mitchell was struck by the absurdity of their situation. A month ago, he'd been a solitary cargo hauler with a carefully constructed cover identity. Now he was on the run with a deaf alien woman he'd accepted as payment for a delivery, hiding in a cave on a frozen moon while the assassins hunted them. And strangest of all, despite the danger, or perhaps because of it, he felt more alive than he had in years. Kiara must have sensed his thoughts. She reached up and touched his helmet, right where his cheek would be. Even through the barrier, the gesture was startlingly intimate. She removed her glove, a dangerous move in the cold, and typed on her datapad. "Not sorry I found message. Sorry for danger, but not for being here with you." Mitchell stared at the words, then at her face, barely visible in the dim light. He removed his own glove and typed back, "I'm not sorry either." Something shifted between them in that moment, a barrier falling away. Mitchell leaned forward until their helmets touched, the closest thing to a kiss possible in their current situation. The sound of retreating footsteps above broke the moment. The hunters were leaving, at least for now. "We should get back to the shuttle," Mitchell said, making sure she could see his lips. "Before we freeze." They made their way carefully through the darkness, the twin moons of Taurus Minor casting just enough light to navigate by. The shuttle was undisturbed, its systems still running. Once inside, they removed their helmets, gasping in the warm air. Mitchell's fingers were numb with cold as he struggled with the fastenings of his suit. Kiara moved to help him, her own hands trembling slightly. As the last piece of his suit fell away, her cool fingers brushed against his neck, lingering there to feel his pulse. Their eyes met, and Mitchell saw his own desire reflected in her gaze. No words were needed, spoken or signed. In the safety of the shuttle, surrounded by the vast emptiness of space and the danger that had brought them together, they reached for each other. Mitchell woke to the soft hum of the shuttle's systems and the unfamiliar warmth of another body beside him. Kiara was curled against his chest, her silver hair spilling across his arm, her blue skin a striking contrast to his own. The events of the night before came rushing back. Their escape, the firefight, the freezing cave, and then he smiled, tracing a finger lightly along her shoulder. Their coming together had been both tender and passionate, a wordless communication more profound than any they'd shared before. The differences in their physiologies had created moments of surprise and discovery that made the experience all the more intense. Kiara stirred, her large eyes opening to meet his. For a moment they simply gazed at each other, a new understanding between them. She smiled and touched his face, her cool fingers tracing the line of his jaw with wonder. The shuttle's proximity alarm shattered the moment. Mitchell leapt up, grabbing his clothes and checking the sensors. "Damn it," he muttered. "They're back, and they brought friends." Kiara was already dressed and at his side, reading the display over his shoulder. 3 syndicate vessels were approaching Taurus Minor, clearly hunting for them. She touched his arm to get his attention, then made a series of quick signs. "I don't understand," Mitchell said, frustrated by the urgency of the moment. She grabbed her datapad. "Tracker we removed. Can we use it?" Mitchell stared at her, then at the device they'd extracted from the hull. "You're brilliant," he said, already moving to the storage compartment where they'd stowed it. "We can reverse the signal, maybe even tap into their communications." Working quickly, Mitchell dismantled the tracker and integrated parts of it into the shuttle's communications array. It was delicate work, and he was grateful for Kiara's steady hands and quick understanding as she assisted him. "There," he said finally, activating the modified system. "Now let's see what our friends are saying to each other." The shuttle's speakers crackled with alien voices speaking a dialect Mitchell recognized from his military days. He translated for Kiara. "They're arguing. The leader, someone named Verg, is angry that the others opened fire yesterday. Says they were supposed to capture us, not kill us." Kiara's eyebrows rose. She wrote, "Why capture?" "I don't know," Mitchell admitted, continuing to listen. "Wait. They're saying something about unauthorized operation, and Council will have our heads. This doesn't sound like an official syndicate mission." As they listened further, a picture emerged that confirmed Mitchell's suspicion. The hunters weren't acting on syndicate orders. They were a splinter faction pursuing their own agenda. "This changes things," Mitchell said, his mind racing. "If they're operating without authorization, the main syndicate might not even know about this. We might be able to use that." Kiara nodded, her expression thoughtful. She wrote, "Trap them instead." Mitchell grinned. "Exactly what I was thinking." They formulated a plan quickly. Using the modified tracker, they would send a false signal indicating their shuttle had been damaged and abandoned. When the hunters landed to investigate, Mitchell and Kiara would ambush them and capture their leader, this Verg character. As they prepared, Mitchell found himself watching Kiara with new eyes. The shy, frightened girl he'd accepted as payment was gone, replaced by a capable, resourceful woman who moved with confidence and purpose. Their night together had transformed something between them, breaking down the final barriers of hesitation and doubt. "You know," he said, making sure she could see his face, "when this is over, if we survive, I want you to stay with me, not as a housekeeper, not as payment for anything, just because I want you with me." Kiara's eyes softened. She set down the weapon she'd been checking and moved to him, taking his face in her hands. She nodded once, firmly, then pressed her lips to his in a kiss that needed no words or signs to interpret. The moment was brief. They had work to do, but it sealed a promise between them. They positioned the shuttle in a narrow ravine, sending out the distress signal that would lure their hunters. Mitchell took position behind a rock formation with a clear view of the landing area, while Kiara concealed herself on the opposite side, armed with a stun rifle Mitchell had shown her how to use. It didn't take long. A small scout ship descended cautiously, landing about 50 meters from their position. 2 figures emerged, tall, spindly aliens with mottled gray skin and elongated limbs. They wore the same reflective armor Mitchell had glimpsed the day before. Where's the third one? Mitchell whispered to himself, scanning the area. The leader, Verge, must still be on board. The two hunters approached the shuttle warily, weapons drawn. When they were halfway between their ship and the shuttle, Mitchell gave the signal. 3 quick flashes with a mirror. Kiara fired first, her shot striking one hunter squarely in the chest. He dropped instantly, paralyzed by the stun charge. Mitchell took out the second one before he could react. Now for the leader, Mitchell muttered, moving quickly toward the scout ship. He was nearly there when the hatch opened and a third figure emerged, taller than the others, with elaborate markings on his armor designating rank. Verg, the alien commander, spotted Mitchell immediately and raised a weapon, but hesitated when Mitchell called out, "I know you're acting without syndicate authorization, Verg. The council doesn't know about this little vendetta of yours, do they?" The alien's 4 eyes narrowed, mandibles clicking in what Mitchell recognized as surprise. "How could you know this, human?" "I have my sources," Mitchell bluffed, "and I have a proposition for you." Verg lowered his weapon slightly. "Speak quickly. You want me dead because of what I discovered during Operation Stardust. But killing me won't change the fact that the Coalition already has that information. What you need is something to bring back to your superiors. Something valuable enough to restore your standing." The alien's posture shifted with interest. "What could you possibly offer?" Mitchell smiled grimly. "How about the location of every Coalition safe house in the Outer Rim, plus the identities of all human agents embedded in Syndicate territory?" It was a dangerous gambit. Mitchell had no intention of actually providing such information, but he needed to get close enough to subdue Verg. The alien commander took a step forward. "You would betray your own kind." "I'm a survivor," Mitchell said, slowly closing the distance between them. "And right now, surviving means making a deal." Behind Verg, Mitchell could see Kiara silently approaching, stun rifle ready. Just a few more seconds. "I find this difficult to believe," Verg said, raising his weapon again. "Humans are known for their irrational loyalty." Mitchell shrugged. "Try me. The information is in my shuttle's computer. I'll show you." As Verg hesitated, Kiara fired. The stun blast caught the alien commander in the back, and he crumpled to the ground. Mitchell exhaled sharply. "Nice shot." Kiara smiled and made a gesture that clearly meant, "I told you so." Together, they bound all 3 hunters and secured them in their own scout ship. Mitchell found the communication system and, with Kiara's help, recorded a message to be sent directly to the Syndicate Council. "Now," he said, turning to Kiara with a grin of triumph, "let's get off this rock before anyone else decides to come looking for us." They were barely an hour into their journey from Taurus Minor when the shuttle's communication system chimed with an incoming transmission. Mitchell tensed, his hand automatically reaching for his blaster. "Unidentified shuttle, this is Commander Harris of the Human Coalition vessel Artemis. Respond immediately." Mitchell and Kiara exchanged alarmed glances. How had Harris found them so quickly? "Mitchell here," he responded cautiously. "What a surprise, Commander." Harris's weathered face appeared on the view screen. "Cut the crap, Mitchell. Our scanners show you've got 3 Syndicate operatives aboard. Hand them over." "They are my prisoners," Mitchell replied. "And my leverage." Harris's eyes narrowed. "This isn't a negotiation. The Coalition needs those agents for interrogation. You have 1 hour to rendezvous with the Artemis at these coordinates." The screen flashed with location data before Harris's transmission cut off. "Charming as ever," Mitchell muttered. Kiara touched his arm and pointed to another alert flashing on the console. A message from the Syndicate Council had arrived in response to the recording they'd sent. Mitchell opened it warily. A dignified alien with iridescent scales and multiple eye stalks appeared on screen, speaking in the formal tones of Syndicate High Command. "Captain Mitchell, I am Counselor Thrix. We have reviewed your evidence regarding Commander Verg's unauthorized operation. The Council disavows his actions and offers amnesty in exchange for his return and your testimony. Contact us within 12 standard hours." The message ended, leaving Mitchell and Kiara staring at the screen in stunned silence. 2 offers in 5 minutes, Mitchell said with a humorless laugh, were suddenly very popular. While considering their options, Mitchell noticed Kiara wasn't beside him anymore. She had moved to the cargo hold where they'd secured the Syndicate prisoners. When he joined her, he found her examining documents she'd retrieved from Berg's personal effects. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly as she handed him a datapad. Mitchell scanned the contents, his expression darkening. This can't be right. The documents detailed a long-standing arrangement between Gron, Kiara's father, and the Syndicate. For years, Gron had been feeding information to them about Coalition shipping routes and defense systems. And most damning of all, there was a specific order regarding Kiara. Asset G will place Asset K with target Mitchell to monitor and report. Asset K's disability makes her ideal. Humans underestimate those they perceive as impaired. Her natural healing abilities ensure target will form attachment. Mitchell looked up at Kiara, whose eyes were filled with tears. "Did you know about this?" he asked, immediately regretting the question when he saw the hurt flash across her face. She shook her head vehemently and grabbed her datapad. "Never. Father said nothing. Thought you were just customer who took pity." Mitchell believed her. Everything about their relationship had been genuine. Her fear, her gradual trust in him, the connection that had grown between them. The Syndicate might have orchestrated their meeting, but they couldn't have predicted what would follow. "It doesn't change anything between us," Mitchell said firmly, taking her hands in his. "But it does change our situation." Kiara nodded, wiping away a tear. She wrote, "What do we do?" Before Mitchell could answer, the shuttle rocked violently. Warning lights flashed across the console. They were caught in a tractor beam. "Damn it!" Mitchell rushed to the controls, Kiara right behind him. "Harris didn't even give us the full hour." Through the view screen, they could see the imposing bulk of the Artemis. The Coalition vessel dwarfed their shuttle, its weapon systems clearly targeting them. "Mitchell," Harris's voice came through the speakers, "don't make this difficult. Prepare to be boarded." Mitchell's mind raced. They were caught between the Coalition and the Syndicate, with evidence that could damage both sides. Harris wanted the Syndicate agents, while the Syndicate Council wanted their rogue commander returned, and now they had proof that Kiara had been placed with Mitchell as an unwitting spy. "We need to play them against each other," Mitchell said quietly to Kiara. "It's our only chance." She nodded, her expression resolute despite the tears that had fallen moments before. She wrote quickly, "Use me as bait?" Mitchell shook his head. "No. We use the truth, all of it." As the shuttle was drawn into the Artemis's docking bay, Mitchell quickly copied all the documents they'd found, including those about Kiara and her father. He then composed a message to Counselor Thrix, attaching the evidence and explaining their current situation. "If Harris tries anything," Mitchell told Kiara, "this message automatically sends to the Syndicate Council. And I've set up the reverse as well. If the Syndicate double-crosses us, everything goes to Coalition High Command." Kiara's eyes widened with understanding. She made a gesture Mitchell had come to recognize. Clever. The shuttle settled onto the deck of the Artemis with a soft thud. Through the viewport, they could see armed Coalition Marines surrounding them. "Whatever happened," Mitchell said, turning to Kiara and making sure she could see his face clearly, "remember that what's between us is real. It wasn't part of anyone's plan." She nodded and leaned forward to kiss him, a gesture of trust and determination that gave him the strength. As the airlock cycled open, Mitchell squared his shoulders. Commander Harris stood waiting, flanked by security personnel. "Mitchell," Harris said with a curt nod. His gaze shifted to Kiara. "And who's this?" "This is Kiara," Mitchell replied. "My partner." Harris raised an eyebrow. "Didn't take you for the type to go alien, Mitchell." Mitchell ignored the jab. "We need to talk, Commander, privately. We have information that affects both the Coalition and the Syndicate. Information that could either start a war or prevent one." Harris studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "My office. Bring your partner, and the prisoners stay where they are for now." As they followed Harris through the corridors of the Artemis, Mitchell felt Kiara's hand slip into his. Despite everything, the danger, the revelations about her father, the uncertain future ahead, her touch was steady and sure. For the first time since this ordeal began, Mitchell felt certain they would find a way through. Together. 3 months after their confrontation aboard the Artemis, Mitchell guided his new ship, a modest but reliable transport vessel called the Phoenix, into Alpha's atmosphere. Beside him in the co-pilot seat, Kiara watched the familiar landscape come into view, her expression a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. Home sweet home, Mitchell said, making sure she could see his face. Or what's left of it. The negotiations with Commander Harris and the Syndicate Council had been tense but ultimately successful. Mitchell had leveraged the evidence they'd gathered. The rogue syndicate operation, Grossen's involvement, the plot to use Kiara as an unwitting spy to secure their freedom and a modest compensation for their troubles. Harris had been reluctant at first, but even he couldn't deny the value of the intelligence Mitchell provided. The Syndicate Council, eager to avoid the embarrassment of Verg's unauthorized vendetta becoming public knowledge, had been surprisingly accommodating. "You've done the Coalition a service," Harris had admitted grudgingly as they prepared to leave the Artemis. "But don't think this means you're welcome back in the fold, Mitchell." Mitchell had smiled. "Wouldn't dream of it, Commander." Now, as they approached the landing pad near Mitchell's property, Kiara touched his arm and pointed to a small figure waiting below. "Is that—" Mitchell squinted, then swore under his breath. "Gron." Kiara's father stood alone on the landing pad, his bulky blue form unmistakable even from a distance. Kiara's hand tightened on Mitchell's arm. "We don't have to talk to him," Mitchell said. "Say the word and we'll turn around." Kiara shook her head firmly and wrote on her datapad, "Need to finish this. For me." Mitchell nodded, understanding. "For you, then." They landed smoothly and powered down the ship's systems. Before disembarking, Mitchell pulled Kiara into his arms, holding her close for a moment. "Whatever happens out there," he murmured against her silver hair, "remember we're starting fresh. Together." She looked up at him with those large, expressive eyes and nodded. Then she straightened her shoulders and led the way to the airlock. Grun looked smaller somehow as they approached. Diminished, his once imposing bulk sagging with age or worry or both. He wore clean clothes, Mitchell noted with surprise, and appeared sober. "Daughter," Grun said, his eyes fixed on Kiara. "Captain Mitchell." Mitchell remained silent, letting Kiara take the lead. She stood tall before her father, her hands moving in the fluid gestures of Proximan Sign Language. Grun watched her hands, understanding dawning on his face. "You learned to speak with hand," he said, wonder in his voice. "The human taught you." Kiara shook her head and continued signing. Mitchell could follow enough now to understand the gist. She had always known how to sign. Grun had never bothered to learn. The alien merchant had the grace to look ashamed. "Many failures as father," he admitted. "Many regrets." Kiara signed again, her movements sharp with anger. Mitchell translated this time. "She wants to know why you worked for the Syndicate. Why you used her." Grun's small eyes darted nervously. "Debts. Many debts. Syndicate offered way out. Said place daughter with human captain, report what she sees. Simple job. Except she couldn't hear your instructions," Mitchell pointed out coldly. "Convenient way to set her up for failure." "Not failure," Grun protested. "Protection. If daughter knows nothing, cannot be blamed when plan fails. The Syndicate punishes only Grun, not daughter." Mitchell blinked, reassessing the alien before him. Had Grun, in his own twisted way, been trying to protect Kiara? Kiara seemed equally surprised. She signed a question, and Grun nodded emphatically. "Always proud of daughter," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Strong, smart, survived despite father's mistakes." Kiara stood very still, processing this revelation. Then she stepped forward and placed her hand briefly on Grun's arm. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. She turned to Mitchell and wrote on her datapad, "He has nowhere to go. Syndicate hunting him now." Mitchell sighed, already knowing where this was heading. "You want to help him?" She nodded, her expression resolute. "Not for him, for me, to finish past." How could he refuse her anything? This woman who had faced danger at his side, who had transformed his solitary existence with her presence, who had shown him that connection was worth the risk. "Fine," Mitchell said, "but he stays in the guest house. And he works for his keep." Relief flooded Grun's features. "We'll work hard. Prove worth." As they walked toward Mitchell's home, miraculously untouched during their absence, Kiara slipped her hand into Mitchell's. The simple gesture conveyed everything: gratitude, partnership, love. The house welcomed them back, its familiar spaces holding memories of their first tentative connections. Mitchell watched as Kiara moved through the rooms, trailing her fingers over surfaces as she had that first day, but now with the confidence of belonging. Later, after settling Grun in the small guest house at the edge of the property, Mitchell found Kiara on the porch watching Alpha's sunset. The amber and violet light played across her blue skin, turning it to a tapestry of color. "What now?" he asked, sitting beside her. She smiled and wrote, "Now we live. Build something new." Mitchell nodded, thinking of the plans they'd made during their journey back to Alpha, his legitimate shipping business, her healing clinic for the settlement's growing population, a life together, built on their own terms. "I've been thinking," he said, taking her hand, "about what I realized when I accepted you as payment for that cargo delivery." She raised an eyebrow, curious. "I thought I was getting a housekeeper," Mitchell continued. "Instead, I got a partner. Someone who sees me, really sees me, and chooses to stay anyway." Kiara's eyes softened. She set down her data pad and signed slowly so he would understand. "Not payment anymore. Free choice. Choose you." Mitchell pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed by the journey that had brought them here. From a business transaction on a dusty planet to this profound connection that transcended species, language, and the silence between words. That night, as moonlight spilled through the windows of their bedroom, they came together with the familiarity of established lovers and the wonder of new discovery. Their bodies spoke a language that needed no translation, finding harmony in their differences. In the quiet aftermath, Mitchell watched Kiara sleeping beside him and marveled at the twist of fate that had brought her into his life. What had begun as a lonely human man accepting a deaf alien girl as a housekeeper had transformed into something neither of them could have imagined. He had realized finally that some debts could never be repaid, and some payments were beyond price.